Serral did go full Hulk mode, but Trap also played like a bit of a derp. I mean, this is the game where I'm just like, this isn't ping, this isn't brilliant strategic value, this is just Trap not playing very well, for whatever reason it is. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes players can be super on point one series, and the next point, they'll just sit there and be like, yeah, I wasn't thinking. It just happens. So this game, I was a little surprised with the way that Serral had responded to it, but he definitely knows +1 flyer. He's gonna think that it's Stargate. It's actually really not a lot of Stargates at all. It is 2, but then there's only 4 Void Rays, which I thought was a bit odd when we noticed. By the time we noticed, there was already a push on the way. So, you know, there's no early Queen walk coming. So maybe this could have been vulnerable to that. We don't really regard that. We don't talk about it. There's no point. We're talking about the rest of the game going. Serral just building up like he does. A lot of Queens. Expecting Void Ray harassment. It doesn't really come because 4 Void Rays wouldn't really do anything. 8 Void Rays might, but Trap stops pretty early to transition into Twilight Council and Forge. And I have no doubt that he was kind of hoping to find Serral a little underprepared. Possibly a 5th base that could be cancelled, or a bunch of Queens out in the open doing nothing. Basically just a Zerg that's not prepared, right? But it's not what happened to this game, is it? Fuck. Sets up this huge attack. Serral is doing his usual scouting thing, which is going really well, by the way. At this point, probably has noticed that there's been no Void Ray harassment, but still is building Queens. I mean, he doesn't see a ground army, to be fair, so he might be worried that they're building up, but he hasn't seen the gateways either. So now he sees the gateways. He's gone up to 12 Queens. And this is where he stops? Okay. So maybe this is the moment that he recognized that it really wasn't going to be a lot of Stargate units. Commits to the Mutas too. Doesn't actually see the push out. Right? No, he doesn't. He doesn't know where the army's coming in. He figures there's an army. He sees the gateways. Setting up a little scuttle run by. Now he sees the army. And this is the point at which you look at this and you're like, this is okay for the Protoss, right? Because you know they're going to warp in another, 10 Zealots. That's going to make their army very sizable. 11 Zealots, 3 Archons, a Warp Prism, and 4 Void Rays against 14 Roaches and 12 Queens. Disregard the Mutas just because, they're not going to fly over the Archons. I don't consider them a fighting force. When you look at this situation, it's very understandable that Trap is out here. This is fine. Thank you for the tier 1 sub. Brother Ska. Didn't do the emote. The moment Serral stepped up is good for Protoss. Yeah, fair. But then Trap does this really weird thing. And I watched Harstom's review of the finals as well. I did kind of like a cast analysis type thing. And I looked at this moment to see what he thought too. And yeah, he basically was like, there's no reason to do this, which is very understandable. I didn't, at the time of the cast, I got this much right. I was like, this could be fine. I see the timing, I see the amount of units here. And internally, I was like, worst case scenario, he runs away. And then Trap commits to the smallest choke on the map. So it's a choke and it's a ramp. And even though he doesn't know what the army looks like right now, because his Oracle had died, he sees it and is like, yeah, that's what I want to do. And this is where I noticed during the cast that there was that many Queens. I hadn't realized that he went up to 12. I thought he was like at 7 or 8 or something. And I was like, Jesus, it's a lot of Queens. If anything else, it's just going to last a long time because the Queens are bulky. But like, on kind of a weird situation, and I said this on the cast as well, I could kind of see where Trap might have been like, Protoss army, pretty good. You know, it's kind of high-tech army as well with the Archons in charge. Queens, and what looks to be only like 12 roaches here, right? Like, count them up, 3, 6, 8. There's like 8 roaches on the front line. I still think overall this is a bad decision from the Protoss, because they don't know if there's 20 roaches here or here. They really don't know what they're moving into. But on one hand, I could be Trap and look at this and be like, I could win this. But I think when you really gave it more than a second's worth of thought, you'd be like, oh, I guess I can't win this. Because guess what happens? He doesn't fucking win it. And it's not the mutas coming out that helped. I don't even think it was the Spore Crawler being in the front lines that was the determining factor, although that really did help. Another reason not to push into that. It just was clear, like, he just should have backed off. There's no reason to commit to this specific position. There just really wasn't. At best, this type of attack is going to skirt the outside of creep, maybe clear it up if it has an observer. Maybe find, as I was saying, a 5th base that's being built or is built and is undefended, maybe. Or if that was the 4th, which technically Trap didn't know, but it doesn't matter because he never went toward it. He didn't even try to like get a cancel or a kill over here. He just decided, of all things, to move up this ramp. Why? So, yeah. The actual attack here, the actual build that Trap went for, I have no problem with. I think we all can agree on that. This is something that a lot of Protosses do, and behind it they build up their technology and then build up an army back at home with shield batteries, and if it doesn't go well, they pull back, save 3 Archons, 4 Void Rays, the Warp Prism lives and can just kind of hang around over here. Not in this game because mutas are out, but still. And the game goes on. But why the fuck would you do this? I don't understand. You really have to ask Trap what he was thinking for that one. Trap looking at his base when his unit's pathed. He couldn't have been because he warps in. Why is this so zoomed in? Like, am I crazy here? I'm just so used to it being zoomed out. Whatever. There you go. Okay, before he decides to go up this ramp, let's watch Trap's thought process. Warp in. Get my robo. No idea what the Zerg is doing, by the way. No idea. His Oracle died scouting the 3rd. Didn't even scout the 4th. He's like, creep's fine. I can go on a creep. Sees roaches retreating, and I guess maybe feels a sense of excitement. And then absolutely dedicates to this push. And he watches it. He's watching it. And he still warps in. And then he's like, oh, I made a mistake. It's just absolutely, if you gave me those 2 armies, I could see how the Protoss could win. But it'd have to be because, like, the Zerg didn't have, like, a concave, or their queens weren't there ready to transfuse, or your army got, like, this huge arc on it. You know, the Zealots came in from all sides. Like, it's a fine army. It just doesn't make any sense to push it, the issue, right then and there. And then Serral's at, like, 4 bases, 78 drones. Why the fuck wouldn't he come across the map after that? Like, we'll clearly have 1, so thanks, dog. That's really cool of you. So weird. Can't explain it. Looks like +1 finish for Serral as the fight started. No, I don't think that would have made a difference either. Would it have maybe resulted in a couple more queens dying? Probably. 2 queens died. No, I can't. It's just... Oof. It's bad. And it's game. But this is also where on the cast I was like, you can see how this army could take on Serral's army if it hadn't just lost like 15, 20 supply and had more of a threatening stance. If it hadn't just been like, take our lives immediately as fast as possible. Because the amount of time an engagement takes is also really important in StarCraft. So a couple more units, 30 more seconds, and he's got the warp in here, maybe a couple of shield batteries because he realizes, oh, that's kind of a feisty army. He's got 2 disruptors instead of 1, like... Oh. Yeah, that's a brick wall right there. Not the most fascinating replays, even leading up to that point, actually. There wasn't even really any trickery or finesse with the rest of their builds. Why the +1 air? He committed to the bid is what it looked like. Wouldn't be the first time I've seen a Protoss commit to +1 air attack, even if they only got a couple of air units. To commit to the idea that it is air. To perhaps force out too many queens from Serral. Or corruptors when it shouldn't have been any Spire units type of thing, but... Yeah, Serral just added queens anyways and didn't give a fuck. You always get +1 air if you're gonna get 2 Stargates, and Trap did get 2 Stargates. Scouting, correct decision making, way outperforms brilliant micro. To be honest with you, and I don't mean to, I'm not balance whining, but I've always felt like Zerg was some of the least... Not that micro isn't important for Zerg if we're talking about spellcasters. Obviously, if they're trying to transfuse and single target down carriers and microbial shroud and parasitic bomb and abduct, like it's all micro and it's all important. But I've always thought that Zerg had the most opportunities to not micro in seconds. Most of their micro comes down to scouting and positioning so they can get a huge concave or get a good run by. We see a lot of prep when it comes to a Zerg engagement, and for Protoss, we see a lot of in-the-moment actions. So, I don't know how to answer your question. See ya. I think Serral just plays pretty perfectly, even if you do talk about micro. You're right, there's been a couple situations where I've seen decent number of high-level Zergs like unnecessarily throw Vipers into the face of an Archon. You're just like, oh. But yeah, it's not something that we ever seem to really highlight when it comes to like most Zerg players, right? We don't talk about split-second micro when it comes to Zerg. Most of that praise goes to a Protoss's force fields, a Terran split, a Terran picking up a Medivacs, right? Clem, highly regarded for his micro. Serral, usually equally as good when it comes to not throwing away stupid things or poorly microing, but it's not a highlight. Beautiful Guardian Shield, yeah, exactly. Dark gets prayed for caster micro. Yeah. Like I said, if you're the carrier, focus fire, the microbial shroud, the queen transfuse, absolutely. But it does sometimes, actually, this is kind of a new train of thought for me. I do sometimes feel like Dark is trying to prove that Zerg can be a micro race with that composition he likes to use. And ultimately, I feel like he gets proven wrong, that you can't actually out-micro the Protoss with that composition. Like his game versus Trap, game 3. One of the engagements he did, but then the next engagement, it's too much micro at that point, actually. Like, fuck off, it's too much micro, I'm not gonna do that. You gotta do so much. And Dark is the best with it. IMO, for sure. But, you know, yeah. You made me look at it a new way. Who's a pro gamer refused to use spellcasters? Call them Roach Boys. Maynard calls them Roach Boys. Sue was one of them. And it seemed very micro-focused for some time, poor Zerg. Even then, I mean, what is Raynor most typically highlighted as? A run-by guy. The way that he uses his Zerglings to run by, and it's not necessarily micro. It's setting up. I mean, it is micro in the fact that it is not macro. But it's mostly like a setup, right? Which is it's a different skill, but it is a skill. I'm not trying to say that Zergs aren't good or can't micro before people inevitably take that away from this conversation. Yeah, link splits versus mines come to mind.
Twitch Prime sound received. Thank you for appeasing.
Even then, I would once again say that that's a lot of usually not last second micro. It can be, absolutely. Absolutely. We see the Zerg players who are really good, see the targeting, pretty cool, and then they split away the Zergling, for sure. But I would say that most of the time, good engagements from Zerg don't happen because in the wave of the attack, they're microing individual lings. It's because they've sent 10 lings and 4 banelings in over and over again, right? That's how Zergs take good engagements. They pop off the Widow Mines beforehand. And it's something that I'm notoriously bad at. Which is why I don't play Zerg. When I play Zerg, I'm like, I can do this, and I just send everything across the map. And I'm like, oh no, I should have prepared better. Who could have seen this coming? So again, not that it's not a skill, but I do think it's a different type of skill. He's able to split second target in the midst of the most intense fights. Yeah. Or he's able to pick up units before they go down. Yep. Like if he's microing 3 different drops, you're fairly sure Clem will micro all 3 drops. But when any other Terran tries to, you're like, you're gonna lose one. It's gonna happen. Sorry, man. This is just one woman's opinion, but overall, thought about it, I do think that Serral has proven that it's, you know, if you're gonna call micro flashy plays, I suppose, like, you don't need flashy plays to be the best player in the world. It is far more important to have the, you know, fundamentals down, basically. So I was trying to pay attention to this during the cast, but it's actually a really hard conversation to have for anyone, in my opinion, because I listened to Harsum for an hour, for about 45 minutes, I'm going to say, talk about PvZ and his opinions on the openers. You guys can see this too on my YouTube. But, you know, he pointed out that the Koreans actually very typically do like going for warp gates, like Adept, warp gate, Stargate, as opposed to Adept, Stargate, warp gate. So changing the warp gate timing to get a faster or slower Stargate timing. And if you're going to do the most ideal possible Stargate timing in the world, then it is going to be before warp gate. Because that 50 gas is actually quite a bit to get off of only 2 gas geysers. But one, for the sake of confusing the Zerg, you can kind of change that up so that if they're saying, oh, warp gate came out later, it's a Stargate, I figured you out. You don't want them to know that 100% of the time. But by the sounds of it, Zerg players don't trust it 100% of the time anyways. They don't trust the warp gate timing, so it's a bit of a funny dynamic. But then 2, apparently the faster warp gate timing, even if you do go into a Stargate afterwards, does give you, obviously, a faster warp gate when it finishes, and does give you like 2 extra Adepts if you're going to do an Adept timing, is what I've gathered. So I was trying to point that out during the cast, but then I felt like it never really became relevant because chat never did try to go for a more confusing warp gate timing. Generally, is he actually did go for Stargate then warp gate if he went Stargate. And the one time he actually went Twilight Council was Charge Arisen Enclaves. Which I guess still gave him like 2 extra zealots in that regard, maybe. I don't know. The Unimparting's micro doesn't feel flashy. Really? Yeah, I would heavily disagree there. I think Bjorn is at a point right now in his career where he's too much flash and not enough substance. So, okay, this one is a Stargate, then Warp Gate, which Serral's gonna know. The other thing that's in addition to like Warp Gate timing is like, is it Adept or Adept Stalker? And the Stalker is generally considered a unit that you get when you try to hide something. Obviously, it's more expensive than an Adept, but it does shoot up, so you can try and kill an Overlord with it. So, Zerg players, if they really can't get a Scout, you see Warp Gate second, and 2 Adepts. You can put your money on a Stargate timing. But as I was saying, it sounds like, at least from Lambo's conversation, that basically all the Zerg players don't take that at face value anyways. They almost always try and get a Scout in some other way or shape or form. And sometimes that Scout is just their Overlord dying to a Void Ray. It was such a rare build to see. Yeah, and that's the most interesting game I think that I'm going to go over. Because I really feel like there might have been something there for Trap if Serral had done his Evolution Chamber dependence. But I'm not 100% sure about that, and I kind of regret discussing it on the broadcast because I'm really not sure. Like I said in the beginning of this segment, I felt like I tried to unwrap things at the time as opposed to just taking a safer, more generalized approach to the cast. And I think I should have done the latter. But anyways.
Twitch Prime sub received. Thank you for appeasing the Overmind.
Thank you, Sturmgot, for the 2-month resub. Oh, thanks for the kind words as well. So Trap does go for a Stalker this time, so this might be perhaps like a little confusing to Serral, who's like, okay, what are you hiding? That's always going to be the question. If you go for a Stalker, what are you trying to hide? But then he proceeds to use his Oracle to scout the Overlord to kill it with the Stalker. And I guess the scariest thing for a Zerg player at this point in time, well, hold on. Does Trap mess up his wall as well? Oh my god. Validation. I mess up this wall all the time. Anyways. So now that you see it's an Oracle, a real Oracle. So at this point in time, the scariest thing for a Zerg player would be that it maybe is a follow-up Twilight Council. Like into Resident Enclaves. But I feel like if you're gonna try and convince Serral that that is the scariest thing to come up, but it isn't, you would have also gone for Warp Gate first in this game? But I might be reaching too much. You know? Again, like, the most ideal setup for an actual Stargate play seems to be the Warp Gate second, after the Stargate, 2 Adepts, so you can provide a little bit of pressure on the front lines, get your scouting, but it's also just less expensive. And then into, like, you know, your third base and your gases, like, that is the macro setup for that. And then for something that's more aggressive and scarier, you get Warp Gate first, and a Stalker to hide what exactly is aggressive about it. And in this opener, you kind of did, like, both. You went Warp Gate second, so it seemed apparent that it's a Stargate, and you also got a Stalker. So I don't know, maybe he could have pushed the narrative a little bit more towards a Twilight Council build, being the most worrisome thing. But maybe he really also was also just going for, like, the in-between, like, well, you don't know what I'm doing. There could be a Twilight Council on the way, you don't fucking know. Because either way, it's for sure, Serral wouldn't know. Serral can't quite tell that. I don't think, anyways. Once he sees the second Oracle, though, I think you would know. Because the second Oracle is literally the cost of a Twilight Council. So, you'd be really pushing off the Twilight Council timing. Well, if this was a bait, he kind of baits the wrong person. I think this is actually a game where I discussed with Fear Dragon how many times has Serral ever done a Ling all-in. Not since, like, Everdream. And Everdream was extremely popular for a Ling all-in because it was a short map and the wall was super easy to fuck up. Because of Fear Dragon has talked about the, I don't know if we call it a glitch, but, like, the animation glitch? I don't know how to phrase it. Like, when a unit attacks, it actually kind of, like, changes its, what's the word? Oh, the box that is around things in video games. Like the collision box type thing. Anyways, like, that's why Everdream was so popular for it. It also was at a time where the Resident Glaives opener... Hitbox, thanks, guys. It also was a time where the Twilight Council Resident Glaives opener was probably at its peak still. Maybe not its peak, but, like, it still was extremely popular. So Everdream was just a map where every Zerg would do a fucking Ling all-in and it would always work. But since then, I don't think I've seen Serral do one. So if this was supposed to be a bait, I think he baited the wrong person. Maybe it was. Maybe this is like 1,000 IQ. He's gonna bait the Ling all-in and then actually have a second Oracle and go, aha! I don't know. Chick is a Ling flood every map, yeah. This was pretty bad. I forgot about this part. This just did nothing. The 2 Oracles flew in, one got injured, and then died shortly after. The Adepts do get some damage. It's not like that many Adepts, but... possibly... an attack that, in general, Serral did not expect, you'd think, but he actually had enough Lings. These don't do anything more. I think at the time I said I didn't actually mind 4 Adepts for 5 drones. I said it was like not the worst thing in the world. Could have gone worse. I think Oracle dies too. Not even tried to pull his drones? Yeah. I mean, yeah, maybe he should have. Maybe it was like a cost analysis where it was like, if I pull away the drones, it's lost mining time. If I just let them chill, 5 drones go down, I'm okay with that. No, fucking no. Oh, because his Link saw that. He miscalculated the shade distance? Or I didn't think they were shade. Maybe he didn't think they would shade. Because he pulls his Lings back to almost the perfect position. Yeah, he does pull his drones away, but then he lets them go back. Yeah, I mean, that's just a mistake. Alright, so yeah, Serral... Yeah, he could have saved 3 drones, probably, if he had specifically microed that. My belief is that Serral thought he had pulled his Lings far enough back to take care of the shade and thought the Adepts wouldn't shade. That's my opinion. Thank you, Agent 1, for the 14 months. Where is his camera? He looked at that Oracle for a long time. And then he went for an inject, and that's when his drones went back to die. So he was kind of looking at the wrong place both those times. I think Lambo mentioned that as well. Oh, cool. Smart. I'm somewhat smart. He wanted that Oracle dead. I feel like he was just like glaring at his screen. Like, fun. Sturm God, I actually would think more to, you know, Lambo's point and my point. I feel like what is happening is that Serral is playing so close to perfectly that he is already thinking of the next step because he's like 99% sure that he already got something right. You know what I mean? If you're 99% sure and history has taught you that your gut feeling is 99% accurate, then you're not going to bother looking at some things because you don't have to. And it is that 1% of time where you're just like, oh fuck, he actually did shade in. Because that's, I think, yeah, more important than trying to micro everything immediately is the ability to set up the situation so that you don't necessarily have to pay attention to it. And you can think about other things. Okay. I'm understanding your question a lot more. I gotcha. Yeah. And I thought for sure Trap was going to do an attack. Or, well, not an attack, really. I thought he was going to move to the middle of the map and abuse the choke a little bit to at least clear up creep, and he didn't do anything. I did get something very wrong that, unfortunately, can just happen when you're casting and you don't have a lot of time to talk. Which, I guess I'll point out when we get there. Ow, Jesus Christ. Trap. Jesus. So the Lings get in, it's obviously a huge mistake. That's a big problem. The Stalker actually wasn't thick enough to solve this problematic wall. Honestly, did Trap do the most, like, Masters 3 thing ever? And fuck up his wall and get a Stalker knowing that he needed a thicker unit to block? Is that why he got the Stalker? Because that's what I do all the time. Honestly. I realize I fuck up a wall and that I can't fix it to be like an adept block, so I get a Stalker. And I take no shame in that. You guys have witnessed me doing it, but I feel like Trap would be a little ashamed. Maybe. The Stalker didn't actually work, so it's funny he puts another one there. I'm pretty sure the Stalker just isn't thick enough. But whatever. The actual damage done wasn't that much, but obviously it caused a little bit of chaos. Had to pull the oracles back. Trap maybe is like 10 seconds later to a push, which in this case didn't really matter, but still. But he also gets scouted, so I don't think before the Ling attack, I don't think Serral actually knew what was going on. He knew it wasn't triple oracle, but that doesn't say very much. I think once you go past one oracle with any other unit besides a Void Ray, you're pretty sure it's not going to be 2 Stargate. Is what it sounds like. It's what it seems like when I've watched all these games. It's either Oracle Void Ray, Oracle, but there's a Void Ray almost always when it goes into more Void Rays. And if it's anything else, if it's 2 oracles or a lot of times 3 oracles, then it's definitely not 2 Stargates. So anyway, I mean, maybe you knew that much, but otherwise there wasn't a lot of scouting. So he knows by the 3rd timing that it's not going to be anything like weird 2-base. But he doesn't know if it's going into maybe like Charge Archon or into Blink +1, which technically he still doesn't know, I guess, off of the scout. It could have been Charge. But he does get a confirmation on the gateways. And this Link could have looked at the gases. I don't think it does, just chilling. This is also a game where he didn't scout the Spire at any point. I remember talking about that a lot. Didn't end up mattering. Actually thought Trap's scouting was really bad this entire series, right? The first game, he loses his Oracle, and then he proceeds to run up a ramp against an army that he had no idea what it looked like. He had no idea. Seems bad. This game, he adds 1 hallucination scout, which is sometimes okay. It's enough. a lot of the times, if a Protoss player is specifically looking for the Spire option, they send out 2 hallucinations. But Trap just sends out 1, and then proceeds to not actually check all the corners. I thought that was very odd. Because it's not even that he doesn't check all the corners. I mean, I think he also misses some of the gases.
Your probes are under attack.
No, he actually does scout. He scouts the natural gases. He doesn't scout the 6th. Like, feels like he's missing something. He does scout the gases. Okay. I stand corrected. But he still doesn't actually literally see the Spire. And even with all of those gases taken, yeah, I don't think it has to be a Spire off of that. Especially when it comes to being Serral. Serral likes adding a Spire and then being like, do I use it or don't I? Oh, I think the pros do a lot of what I'm doing, but even more specifically. And I have no problem with that. I think actually not to cover up for myself too much, but I do honestly believe that there, like, how to put this, like, analysis has to be done in a game, yes, but there's only so much like surface level or deep analysis you can do, and a lot of it kind of has to be surface level because you kind of have to let the cast go on. You know what I mean? Like, you could sit there and talk about the promise of a warp gate first or second, and the timing of the gas, and so on and so forth, but if you're just going on for 3 minutes in a finals broadcast and your co-caster is there just being like, and there's like anything else to talk about, it's pretty bad actually. Even if some people would sit there and be like, best cast ever, so much analysis, oh my god. It's really not the best cast ever. So there really is supposed to be, I think in all games, I really think there is supposed to be an analyst segment where you can go into things like that really, really hard. So, again, like, I missed some things or maybe misconstrued things on the broadcast, and I don't mean to be covering for that, but to an extent, like, you really can't go into in-depth analysis and really, you can't sit there and take the whole, like, branches of thought and just be like, if this happens and this happens and that happens and that happens and this happens and then that might happen and then that might happen too, because that just is bad casting. It's a bad cast. It's not enjoyable for but maybe like 10 people are like, yeah, more analysis. Let's do it. So I'm totally on board having the pros come on and be like, super analysis, but I do think that even as good as they can be when it comes to like live commentating, their skills are more specifically tailored towards an analyst segment, which StarCraft can't afford, basically. We used to have it. That's how Todd actually got his start, is that he was a professional player, and WCS Europe had a little, like, telestrator segment. So this push is fine, right? It's not the way that I thought Trap would push. I thought he'd clear up creep here, but either way, actually, this makes more sense. He can deny drones. He can cut off the creep that probably matters a lot more. A lot more of Blackburn games have scuffles around this portion of the map than they do down here. Unless you expand down here, which Trap does, but that's another point to bring up, I guess. Remember the TV? Yeah, so Katowice still has a bit of a segment there, and I think it can be used really well. Personally, I think I used it really well once or twice. at least once. Maybe not more than that. But it's only seen at Katowice. And obviously we don't hire any specifically analysis casters to do it. We're also, you know, in a unique position as esports go to not have dedicated analysts and dedicated commentators. We are expected to do all three things: hype, color, and desk analysis. Well, to explain, I think I did a good job at least once, because there was one time where it was especially necessary, because me and Maynard are casting and the stream cut out during like a really pivotal moment. So it was very worthwhile to go into that game and talk about what happened. But there is a lot of circumstances where we were forced to use the telestrator in 2020 and we got nothing. Especially, it was a bad system at first. They were making the person who was on break do the telestrator, which meant that they weren't really on break. And even if they were desk segmenting, like they still, like it's not the same as being casting the game, being super intimate with the game. So at first we did that and it was just a bad idea. I made a dumb joke about Haas that I think back to every couple of months when I'm trying to go to sleep and go, oh God, I'm so dumb. Why did I do that? Kill me now. But then once I suggested it, thank you very much. When I was like, you know, you should really just have someone who just cast do that segment. I think it had a lot more opportunities to showcase cool things. But sometimes too much of a good thing, you know? Trap expand more than normally? I don't think so. He overstays his welcome here. Almost again, kind of like poking the bear, but Serral, I mean, Serral's at 67 drones. Trap sees nothing at the gold. Might have assumed that Serral just, you know, pulled away any drones he would have put over there. But I think regardless, like I feel like you look at that no drone situation and you got to be like a little wary. He's not really that wary. He comes in with the Orc Revelation maybe a bit too soon, actually. So he misses the fact that the army's amassing and it's open up the rocks. So he overstays his welcome by like 5 seconds. His reinforcements are coming in from a weird angle. I don't know why. What the hell are they doing that for? And this just means that he can't move and shoot with like all of his stalkers at once. They aren't with the sentries, so they can't like emergency force field and get the fuck out of there. Because they should have. I think in an ideal situation, all the stalkers are together, the sentries are right here, and the sentries go, oh shit, and they force field, and then he runs away. Instead, he kind of has to collect everything together, get up the ramp. Again, not being able to move and shoot nearly as much or as well. And then he goes, oh shit, I gotta go. And then he tries to force field in the middle with sentries that, unfortunately, like, and this has to do with sentries being hotkeyed. If a unit has energy, it's going to be on the front lines that cast it, right? So he might have meant to do it with these sentries because they were safe, but these ones were closer. And then he has to use more force fields as he proceeds to take, again, an overeager engagement. But he uses up a, you know, a decent amount of force field energy. He loses a sentry, which doesn't sound too bad. But then Fear Dragon pointed this out. I think it actually did hurt him a lot for the final push. Betrayed by smart casting, exactly. As Serral almost always says a relatively low drone count. He did talk about that a little bit in his interview where he's just like, I just think that ZVP is mostly about scouting and knowing when to drone. So he does play a very safe style, but he doesn't seem to be ever punished for it. Like, even if the Protoss is like, I know Serral's going to be really cautious and safe, and I'm going to be like insanely greedy, it doesn't seem to matter. But I also feel like Serral also just reads things really correct. It's not even that he's being, like, blindly safe. He just actually knows when he should drone or when shouldn't he. Maybe someone else gets away with this same game, but at 80 drones already. Sure, I believe that, but you also don't really have to since you have the gold base. And then Serral again has a Spire that Trap never scouted. Doesn't end up using it, just puts all his gas into Banelings. Which these queens managed to safeguard for a while as far as being... Wow, the timing of that Oracle. Oof. So I missed this, though, during the cast. Anyways, I missed this. So I think the Observer, the in-game Observer, was like this. This is my defense, okay? I think the in-game Observer was set up like this, and we're mostly watching a screen. We do technically have ourselves in the game, or most of us do, not everyone. But I was in the game here. Our situation, let me try to explain it with words. Our desk has laptops that are basically like... How do I put this? Like, there's a little slit that goes down, and then the laptop keyboard is there, and the laptop monitor, there we go, monitor is here. So we're kind of like looking down into it. And I know Roddy found that very uncomfortable. And I know DeMuslim never bothered joining games. So it was a lot easier to just sit back and just kind of look at the screen that's in front of us, which has all the production additions as well. So anyways, I was looking at the screen, not the game. And I think the Observer was set up like this. So I thought that Trap actually didn't know about this engagement, because we had maybe just witnessed the Oracle skirt by, then it went over here. And I thought that Trap didn't know, which was clearly very wrong. There's an Observer right there.
Resubscription received. Apparently you are doing something right, Captain.
This is the last time we saw Serral at 110 drones. Well, you should never go up that high. But we see him go up to 90, still a decent amount. Ison, thank you for the 31 months. And he's definitely gone up to 110 drones in like super late game EVP. But then he makes, 15 sack defense structures. So anyways, that's a mistake ZombieGrub will willingly own up to. Still, in my defense, I still feel like Trap didn't actually respond to this in a way that Trap usually would. So he clearly sees this. Really can't argue that. There's an Observer right fucking there. He sees this, and maybe he thinks that because it's slow Baneling, Serral won't push. But he waits a while to actually move his army into a position that can force field. And I tried to explain this in the cast, but there's another scenario of having too little time to speak. Yes, the corrosive biles will break the force field, but even the 5 extra seconds you can get while they have to do that, especially if they don't preempt the force fields, which usually Serral would do, but he didn't do this time. Yeah, if they don't preempt the force fields, you actually buy like a decent bit of time. Enough time for another couple of Colossus swipes, enough time for your Stalkers to concave, enough time for your warping to finish, like that type of time. And, well, that was weird. Oh, that's fucking weird. Instead, he like slaps down one, but then misses the other one. It's already through. He has less force fields than he should have, remember, because his sentries had to use them earlier, and also he lost a sentry. And so the army just comes barreling. And you can't excuse Trap for not knowing, but Trap was a bit late to the reaction. Then he doesn't have, to me, it doesn't look like he has a plan of retreat. And you almost always have to against an army like that. There's very... Trap is familiar with this. He doesn't need me telling him this. But you almost never have an engagement with this matchup style where the Protoss army just like... That was super easy. No problem. Not until you have like 4 Colossus. So Trap must know that he's going to back away, right? But he doesn't seem to have a very good plan for backing away. So to me, it looks like he's panicking, which I think he is, but I was under the wrong impression he didn't know it was on the way. He knew it. He had time to prepare for it. It still seemed like he was mostly last second reacting. His force fields don't help him basically at all, I would argue. I don't think they worked at all. And then... Oh, excuse me. And then he starts to back into his natural, possibly thinking that if he walked up this way, the units would spill into a natural that didn't have any wall, which is true. But then he realizes that if he gets trapped in his natural, his third base is also pretty fucked. And that has even, you know, a really important production facility there. So he's like, well, now I'm going to split my army. Either because he realized I have to split my army, which fucks him over, or because of AI. Also could have been it. Hard to tell. If he was backing away here and then he clicked here, right? Maybe the army's like, I don't know what that means, and they split. But that just means that he's in like the worst possible position, I would say. If he commits his army one way or the other, at least his army is a fighting force. But as soon as he splits his army, it's very easy for Serral to overwhelm. Again, maybe Trap also thought centrifugal flux wouldn't have finished, so that's a bit of unfortunate timing there. Roly-poly-oly. And then the pylon here blocks the Colossus, I think, from even trying to pop out this way. I could be wrong, but it doesn't matter apparently, because now having been able to get into the replay and look, he did have it rallied to the natural. So either way, his Colossus, I think, was fucked, but he didn't even try to send it backwards. And second Colossus could have been extremely helpful. Maybe he is able to save both of these back here. This third one pops, and maybe he actually can hold two different positions. Maybe. But this Colossus doesn't actually get pulled all the way back anyways. By the time it does, it's still on top of Banelings. This one isn't popping anytime soon. You can certainly see how Trap could have held with the army, with the production on the way. But it felt like a position where Trap didn't realize he was going to be under pressure. Like, he couldn't think 5 seconds into the future and be like, okay, this is going to happen, so I'm going to do this, this, and this. It felt like he was caught by surprise. So that's my defense. But apparently he wasn't caught by surprise. He had an observer right fucking there. Thank you, Agent 1, for the 5 gifted subs. So I don't know. I could be totally off base. To me, it seems like Trap was surprised. Possibly because he saw that it was slow Banelings and thought, oh, he's not going to push until he has fast Banelings. Possibly because he swore he slapped down a second force field here, and then maybe it was ping. Could be. Could be. Maybe he overcompensates for ping and tries to slap down a second one, inadvertently canceling the second one, you know?
Twitch Prime sub received. Thank you for appeasing the Overmind.
Thank you, Alfonso Donzo, for the 15 months. The sentry's got caught behind the stalker. Possibly. I'm gonna look at this really, really, really intently. So this force field, I think this is the sentry uses the force field, right? And it clearly only has one. Yep. Yeah, I think you're right. Yep. Yep. I think you're right. The one force field here gets slapped down, but then these two kind of waddle. I don't know, they're hovering, right? They freak out behind a stalker. And then Trap maybe notices, like, oh fuck, the second force field isn't going down, so he emergency slaps down these two force field, which don't look very good. Mostly because the army's already through, so yeah. But it's still a situation where, like, you know, his army could have been prepared. The sentries could have been close enough. He had sight on the army. He just must not have thought it was actually going to push. Not until the queens arrived, not until Baneling's speed actually finished. Yeah. And then I think committing to his third would have been the better call, but that is a really hard decision to make on Blackburn. Specifically, Blackburn is... Any matchup has this tough decision. If I protect one of my bases, I'm not protecting the other base with this angle. The nice thing about Blackburn... Ow! So Apollo stepped over my hand. That Euthermal pointed out that I never really put 2 and 2 together is that this shield battery does cover both your natural and third. So this is actually one of the few maps that has that possibility, which is pretty cool. A lot of other maps, the third is not positioned in a way that one shield battery can share the defense of 2 bases, but this one technically does. It's, you know, not super comprehensive, but it does. Yeah, I think if he had committed to the third base defense and then maybe warped in here or had a force field to use here, it would have been better. But then, perhaps more importantly, had he actually continued pulling the Colossus back and saved this one. I'd actually have to take command of the replay to see if that actually would have been able to pop backwards. Because Colossus can walk over stuff, we all know that, but sometimes when they pop, they don't walk over stuff. And if it is a circumstance where the structures are like literally tightly around the Robo, the Colossus will also have the same problem as a siege tank. If I remember correctly, it's been a long time. But if there's like 4 gateways or 5 gateways just perfectly in a flower here, the Colossus won't pop. So it's question. It seems like this Colossus could have fallen backwards, right? This one just needed to be placed somewhere else, and then we know it was AI, but he rallied it over here. And this Colossus stays alive because of the shield battery, but then it never gets pulled back, so the Banelings could have just been trapped on the Stalker. Instead, we're trapped underneath the Colossus. Seems unideal. The Colossus also killing them also makes them dangerous, which is funny. So sad, too bad. But you can see, there's a lot of situations where the Zerg army looks like this, and there's like 20 Stalkers left over, and you're like, oh, okay, the Protoss actually held. But instead, it's only like 10 Stalkers. Sucks. Thank you, Mac Descent, for the 20 months. Okay, so this is the game that I thought was maybe the most interesting. Because Trap did something interesting. So Serral does go for a pull first. He really doesn't like taking this third, apparently, on this map, even though it makes Queen Walks a bit scarier. Oh, a lot scarier. Really doesn't want to take anything but his natural. Trap doesn't respond at all, because he shouldn't. Goes Warp Gate Adept. So it's really as fast as possible. Blocks out the earlier links. So far, so good. Overlord comes in, sees that it was faster Warp Gate. Now is in his mind like, oh, is it a Twilight Council? Parks his Overlord so that if an Oracle or a Void Ray appeared, well, he'd know. Sees that it's a Stalker, but then last game was a Stalker as well. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not Stargate. Could just be Trap trying to trick him. And then sees, I think, the Adepts being very reserved. Not getting any scouting done. Just staying at home. Building up. And all signs, I think, for Serral lead to the fact that it's Twilight Council for Resident Enclaves, because that's always what people do. So Serral starts the Resident Enclaves defense. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't play enough Zerg. I hate playing Zerg. So I always forget what the exact timing is that they want to get to a Roachworn and a 39 drone count defense. It's something along those lines. It's like 330 for the Roachworn, right? And then 39 to 42 drones for the economy before they start making stuff. but I don't remember exactly which one. And it also gets a little fuzzy because if they think it's a Stargate opener, they might have gone up to a certain amount of drones and then had to build spore crawlers. Or if they think it's a DT follow-up. It's something along those lines. You guys can trust me enough for that one. So Serral, as I said, probably thinks it's Resonant Enclaves. I'm not interested in what you would do against a charge all-in because no Zerg is ever going to predict a charge all-in because it's pretty bad. I know this is a charge all-in. I know that. But no Zerg should ever initially predict charge all-in. It's what is the Zerg drone defense against Resonant Enclaves. Which honestly looks very similar. There are the spore crawlers. Singular, spore crawler. Okay. So he goes up to 41 drones. So it seems like, yeah, 41. Yep, you're right. For any Twilight Council attack. Then he builds another one because he really doesn't know what's coming along here. He might even start to be a little suspicious of like a DT follow-up or an actual DT build. Then his Overlord gets in. And I guess, what is his natural Overlord see? He sees the Adepts. Does he see all 4 Adepts? He does, because he sees them shade. And then these are actually kept hidden, which is kind of funny, because I feel like Trap is trying to put on appearances that it is Resonant Enclaves. So it's funny that he actually hides them. But perhaps, again, like, very much committing to the bit. Like, no good Protoss player would show that he's warping in Adepts. That's silly. Then he's shield batteries. It's, like, very much... Okay, he's gonna attack me, if it wasn't clear. Then the Overlord comes in. Oh, and also the Warp Prism doesn't have to go into sight to be able to pick up the Adepts. The Overlord comes in, sees 1 probe out of gas, which... actually could still be Resonant Enclaves, I think. Because I was listening to Harsum talk about this. If it's 5 in, it still could be. But then eventually sees that this is also out of gas. And I think that would tell you it's charged. But here's the thing. I think what Serral proved to us today is that as long as you know it is a Twilight Council attack, the same defense is fine. My train of thought that I tried to express on the broadcast as well is that Trap might have been hoping for a very specific response from Serral. One that Serral is well known to do. Which is not necessarily to go into army production as fast. I don't know his exact build order, to be honest, but a lot of the time Serral against Resonant Enclaves will just let his 3rd base go, like not protect it. It's not going to die to Resonant Enclaves, right? Not anytime soon. So he just lets it be the point of attack, and then he walls off. Which actually, his wall here would have been really awkward. Screw tumor. Then he just walls off. So my thought process was that Serral's already building up an army. He's already reading this perfectly because it's a Twilight Council opener. He knows that. So he's building up an army, might even plan on counterattacking if things all go well. That already is good enough against Charge All-In. Even though he might not have known it was Charge, he's already building up an army. That's all you gotta do. Just gotta build an army at the right time. Charge All-Ins really suck. But had he committed to the Evolution Chamber wall, maybe his queens are on the front lines. Maybe he doesn't have 3 Ravagers already. They're still roaches or they're still popping. And then the charge lots break through the wall faster than the Adept Shades would have. And he collapses in on undefended Serral. That's why I think Trap wanted to do this. But even then, I'd have to like find a Serral replay where he defends Resonant Enclaves, which I know happened in DreamHack Season Finals. Against, I think, is it Sound maybe? They do it against Sound. You guys remember? think he did. I might look at that and see what Serral has in that defense. But it's, even though I think he only very much so last second realizes it's charge, he's already inadvertently defended it. I mean, his queens are actually still kind of caught off guard. His unit number isn't that impressive. It's what you would want versus Adepts. And he still holds it. And of course he's building more because he realizes what it really is, but even then, he's like totally fine. But what if Serral had done the evolution chamber wall off instead? It's the only thing I can really think Trap was hoping to happen, because otherwise charge all-ins really suck. They do look like resonating glaive attacks, but the same defense still works. So unless you could convince them that it's not Twilight Council, which seems very difficult to do, I don't know why you're hoping that it would be a surprise enough. But then again, sometimes it really is just that one thing. The one time the roaches get concaved on, the one time the lings aren't in position, something along those lines. And the charge all-in does work because they go there, they see it coming and they're like, what the fuck? Maybe that's honestly all Trap was hoping for, was for Serral to go, what the fuck? And then, you know, drop all the limes. Like, I can't handle all this, and just totally fail. And so I guess Serral has done that in the past. Not too often, though. The rest of the game is pretty interesting, though, right? Because even though this seems to have failed, it has failed, Trap still makes a game out of this until his Nexus dies. Forces Serral to actually have to micro, but Serral was continuing to build army, even got a spine crawler. Trap goes into the Disruptor follow-up, which we've seen other Protosses try and make wonders happen with a follow-up Disruptor all-in. Zest did it last season finals. Almost worked. Cat treats. Remind me at the end of the replay analysis. Which is over soon, because it's only 4 games. So it turns out to be an attempt to macro, which I'm also on board with. But, you know, either way, it's going to be really difficult for Trap. Serral doesn't get the Nexus, but then... I mean, I do feel like he almost overstayed his welcome, but he's fine. Yeah. But then he just picks off like 5 roaches to go kill the Nexus, which really... This game would have been so different without this. If this Nexus survives while Trap applies all this pressure on the front lines, there is absolutely a game to be played out. One that I think Trap still loses, because even though Serral's only at 53 drones, he still is able to get his upgrades, which speed's been done, +1's on the way, centrifugal hooks. He'll still have at least one really good burst army to, I think, still kill Trap with. But, you know, it might have only been the one army, because he's at a pretty terrible economy. But since Trap did lose the third, made this super all-in, already starts off poorly, and then Trap has to back away. I feel like this is when he was shaking his head, realizing he's probably dead. He is still trying to do whatever he can, though. Props to Trap. Then he tries to move in. And this was really funny. I don't think I articulated my thoughts well enough during the broadcast, but basically, Serral took away the chance of Trap to micro. I was saying that, like, these aren't like the dancers dancing around each other finesse that we sometimes see versus Disruptors. This was just body slamming a ballet dancer so they couldn't do anything. It's not the most graceful of attacks, but it nonetheless worked. So Serral is already pre-spread, right? And that's all well and good. That's cool. Trap doesn't think he'll actually engage because he has so many Disruptors. So he's thinking like, oh, back away and I can continue bullying him. And then Serral's like, no, I'm just gonna commit. A Reddit comment had pointed out that maybe Serral was individually target firing disruptors, and I was interested to see if that was true. It wasn't. Nope, definitely not. That guy was wrong. Nope, the disruptors just didn't fire fast enough to matter by the time that everything else was dead. Because who thinks that the Zerg's gonna collapse in like that? Who does that? So the disruptors actually do go off. Many of them go off, but they just... The concave's good enough, it turns into a surround by the end of things. And there's not enough beef outside of the disruptors to actually hold up against a Zerg army, so... Trap went in there thinking he would micro. Serral went in there thinking he would just body slam his opponent. Because 100%, every disruptor player is going to think like, all right, I'll send out a disruptor and hopefully hit something. Then I'll send out my second one. Then I'll send out my third one. I'll have them dancing and weaving while I just add up the damage with my immortals. And instead, Serral just like, whoa. And Trap's like, fuck, I gotta send all my disruptors out all at once. So that was pretty funny. Serral basically negated any micro that Trap would have done. And this was also a potentially cool game, but it goes really, really poorly. So specifically, Lambo is a bro. He's a Lamb bro. I talked to Lambo for an hour, and we discussed a lot of things, and then parted ways. And then he sent me a message that expanded on things we had discussed. So I'd asked him specifically, like, what handles a 2 or a queen all-in? And he had said at the time, like, oh, this or that. But then he remembered what else does it. So I actually had like a Discord message from Lambo. It's like 3 paragraphs long, explaining what counters a queen all-in. And I got it right here, but the one thing I didn't read fast enough, basically. When I saw what was happening, I literally opened up my Discord and I tried reading Lambo's message. Because I knew the gist of it. I knew that Trap was doing the 4 gases before third, so his third is going to be later. I knew he was doing a Stargate build that is usually not very good, but on this map has been used before. But I didn't get to go into the fact that Serral would have known what build. It was a 2-base build, or how to say, it was a 4-gas build based off the Nexus timing. I wasn't sure about that, because it is like a 10-second difference. Sometimes that can be a bit ambiguous in StarCraft. Serral later confirmed he did know in the interview. And I didn't really get to go into the idea that Trap was probably prepping for a queen walk and wanted to negate the possibility. Because we started talking about the potential of the Tempests and their drone harassment. And then Trap sent them to the middle of the map and lost one. And that was like, oh. Okay then. Oh, so Serral doesn't mind taking the forward third on this map, which actually might have made Trap change his mind. He might have seen this forward third and been like, oh, Serral actually took this on Beckett, like the shortest map of the map pool, and he's up 3-0. Why wouldn't you do a queen base? Fuck, queen walk? Stuck on the base count for some reason. Why wouldn't you do a queen walk? I could totally see Trap actually already prepping for a queen walk before the game even started, and I could see him being like, when he saw the third was taken, as the natural. So, yeah, the 2 gases here in the natural before the third. Apparently a 10-second difference on the Nexus timing. Serral's scouting is immaculate, so he actually sees it going down, so there's really no question. And he, again, confirmed the interview, like, yeah, I knew it was a 4-gas, 2-base priority type build, usually going into double Stargate. There's a couple of things that come out of a double Stargate, though. There is the double Tempest, and there's also a double carrier build. And basically, according to Lambo, any of those negates a queen walk. So if Serral was thinking about queen walking, maybe he was, maybe he wasn't, he's not going to do it now. But he is going to start prepping for a Stargate build. So whether it's carriers or Tempests, both are answered with a large amount of queens, let's be real. Queens do a lot of things. Carriers, I would usually say, are more of the direct type of attack. They go through the middle of a map and they hope to find queens not together. You pick off 2 queens, then another 2, then another 2, and suddenly the Zerg has no queens type of situation. But that hasn't worked for a long time. I know Zaun has done this build a couple of times. I think Neeb had been doing this build last year and did against like Scarlet in one of their best ofs, right? But it's kind of agreed upon by at least both Hearthstone and Lambo that they're kind of dumb builds. They're not particularly good. They do negate a queen walk, sure, but even that's a bit in question, because I brought this up on the cast. MaxPax does this build on this map. He does it not in the way that Trap did it, which was interesting, but I've seen him be queen walked, and he still doesn't win the game, because the Tempest don't do enough damage. But anyways. So I start discussing the idea of like all this dead space, and a Tempest one-shots a drone. They don't one-shot SCV, so don't do this versus Terran. It one-shots a drone, so by abusing this little space here, you can actually pick off like 10 drones, honestly, maybe more. There was a MaxPax a laser game earlier on this year where a laser just didn't prep for it at all and died. He just straight up died to like the 2 beginning Tempests. So saying the fast for gas tells me there's a mass voids. Yeah. Because you can do mass voids off of the 3rd Nexus, then the additional gases in a 2nd Stargate. That's what Trap did in the first game, although he didn't commit to the voids.
Resubscription received. Apparently you are doing something right, Captain.
ADUI Scar, thank you for 13 months. Welcome back. You rocked the season finals. Thank you. So Trap doesn't go for like this harassment style Tempest thing. He actually gets... No, I don't remember the name of this actually. He gets Teutonic Destabilizers. That's what it is, isn't it? Just a little surprised by. That doesn't mean they kill hatcheries really quickly, or even the gases can be really annoying to a Zerg player when they want all 6. But he doesn't get to use it, because he goes to the middle of the map and then he just gets pushed back. And it really is, apparently, it's easy for Zerg pros at this level to know what this is going to be, or at least guess between a couple of things. The really nice thing about a faster 3rd base than the gases is that that's kind of a world of possibilities. But when you go for the 2 gases, then the 3rd base, it really does reduce it down to like one of 2 options, which seems to be Tempest or Carriers. So, yeah. This doesn't seem like that good of a build. Serral knows what it is. And then Trap does it, again, I think an obvious thing, and then he uses it in a really obvious way, which I think is kind of weird. Like, I could 100% see these Tempests doing damage, which is also possibly why Serral has already moved his queens over here, perhaps both to spread creep, but then also to stop them from getting into this corner. Which is good prediction, 100%. But then Trap really is just like on the front lines, like, I'll fucking do what I want. Yes, my cat's very good. It's currently using my wrist as a sleeping pillow, but that's fine. But yeah, Trap just goes to the middle of the map and is like, oh no, there's queens here on creep. What a surprise. Oh golly gee. And then he makes the mistake of trying to kill them. He's already been pounced upon, it's not gonna work. I mean, that's a moment that I think we all identify with when you're like, maybe, oh no, I fucked up. Okay, get out, get out, get out, get out, get out. But then it was already too late. So the Tempest build doesn't do anything. It's already kind of a questionable build to begin with. Serral's recognized it, adapted to it, defended it. And Trap's... I was saying in the broadcast that he kind of got to do what he wanted, which is still kind of true. He wasn't killed. He wasn't ling all in. He didn't have to deal with a bunch of roaches on his 3rd. He did get to do his build, but then he really didn't get to do anything with it. And that's not a good sign. And he keeps on fucking it up too, like... And I can't blame Ping on this, honestly. Like, maybe there is a half-second later reaction to his pullback, but just decision-making wise, does it sound like a good idea to use these units on top of creep against someone who does have queens? It's always risky. Maybe it's what you kind of have to do because you do need to start cutting their queen count, keeping their transfuses low, but it's always risky. And he just doesn't... He has no scouting ahead because his Oracle is out of energy. It's nowhere near. He doesn't know when the queen's going to pounce on him. He can't use the Tempest's full range of sight either, like a tank. And then he's also letting Serral use the acceleration zone by coming through here. Another point that Fear Dragon brought up. Which means that when Serral is like, I don't think you're going to pull back in time, he's twice as likely to actually be right. Like, I don't think you can pull back in time because I got acceleration zone. Almost seems like Trap doesn't use the Tempest build very much. It's a good point. He probably doesn't. He probably was thinking about the Queen Walk and was like, I'll do this build. It'll take out that from the equation. I don't have to worry about it. And it'll probably be so surprising that Serral would be like, what the fuck? This is a bit odd. So maybe he throws Serral off his game too. Strategically, in a best of 7, totally love it. Totally love it. Trap actually really divided up his play, right? Like, he played a ton of different ways. Just nothing ever worked. But I do think that you can see how this build is a limiter. It limits the Protoss to kind of one or two things, and then a certain way of playing, and isn't necessarily that great. It's not the worst thing. It's not as bad as the final push makes it look. Something I'll add there. Yeah, I do kind of not like the decision to do a build like this in game 4, but since it is Beckett, Serral did take the forward third, like, probably the easier option than trying to actually defend with like a more normal build. So I can kind of see it, but on the other hand, like, it sucks that he was put in this position. Then this happens, right? So his Oracle gets taken out flying to the middle of the map. He doesn't see that the army starts to move out. He just doesn't know. He does already have shield batteries building, so he's obviously seen that he hasn't done much damage to the queens. He hasn't even gotten close to the hatcheries, which there are clearly 4 of. He probably figures that Serral is likely to attack him in some way. And then his Oracle died to the Corruptors. So, yeah. He knows he could be in trouble. He's trying to react to the Corruptors with building Void Rays, so that was a good scout, but then the sacrifice of the Oracle means he can't actually see where the army's coming in from. And that, I think, is what kills him. Because he's got shield batteries at his 3rd, just all well and good, and thinks, oh, maybe I need one of my natural, which he does, but the army's actually already on the way. He has no idea. The army is almost at his natural at this point. There it is. He has no idea. So, instead, if he starts to... If he knows the army's on the way, like the Zealot... Whoa. Oh, Apollo messed with my DPI. If he knows... If he sees this with the Zealot here, instead of just the Lings, which is... so brutal. Then he's already trying to pick off some units, right? Like, it's dangerous because the Corruptors are decent enough against his still growing air army that doesn't have an upgrade. But he could try. He could start picking them off, maybe buying some time, forcing the queens to stall and transfuse, something like that. Builds 4 shield batteries instead of 1. And then might even be able to buy his +1 timing. By shield battery, it's shield battering it? That doesn't make any sense. By using a shield battery on it, by, again, just buying more time. If Serral's like, okay, I gotta wait a little while, like, he just doesn't do anything. So it really was quite the lame ending. So again, the lack of scouting gets him. His scouting was not very good in this game, but also his control wasn't very good. It seemed like maybe he was a bit frazzled. The Blackburn game, to me, points to a less than perfect Trap. you know, a Trap who like had a lot of Korean barbecue the night before, bottle of soju, not too much, but still woke up a bit groggy and then had to get his headspace. When sometimes at 6 in the morning, after 3 series, sometimes Trap looks like a Trap who just had, you know, like his vitamins, he ate his Wheaties, he slept a perfect 8 hours, and everything just clicks. He'll look like that at 6 in the morning crossover, because he did in a lot of other the season finals, or the TSL finals. But this one, no, he looked off. Oh, Barcode. Why did you have to so obviously tell me what barcode you are? Sarah's 100% ready and playing an NA. Trap plays an NA all the time. I'm trying to say that there is absolutely no way you can use the NA server as an excuse, or the ping is, or fuck, the time is the excuse. Because he's been much better with the same exact 2 circumstances. There are so many Trap games where he is under the exact same circumstances, sometimes in even more grueling conditions because he had to play a best of 7 before the finals. And he does better. Trap was off his game for reasons unbeknownst to us. Maybe he didn't put his lucky rabbit foot in his pocket. Who the hell knows? Dark vs. Trap would have been played in Korea. I think if Serral's assessment that Trap's mentality was broken. It's hard to say because he had nothing to make him make as big of a mistake as he did in the first game of the series. I'd understand the mentality being broken thing if Trap had like an adept mismicroed, his Oracle flew into Queens accidentally, his probe got locked in so a pylon didn't build, and other unfortunate circumstances, and then he sacrificed his entire army up a ramp into a choke. Then I'd understand the mentality being broken. But basically, that first game was like nothing really happened. Then Trap just threw all of his army away for no good reason. And I can't see his mentality being broken up until that point for any reason. He just won versus Parting, and he had a good day versus Dark the day before. Unless he actually came into the finals being like, oh, fuck, Serral's totally gonna destroy me. Oh, God. And then, yeah, maybe his mentality was already destroyed. But certainly, like, after that one throw of an army, I guess, on the first game, I could see him being like, oh, yeah, I'm really doomed. Fuck. But I can't explain that first engagement. The one on Jagannatha. That was just weird. We all had bad days. This is Trap. It's what it feels like. Like, it absolutely feels like like Trap would play another day in the exact same scenario. Just finishing a best of 5, forced to play Serral, cross server at 4 a.m. And I think he'd do much better. So you can see how this army might have had a chance if it had been able to directly combat the Corruptors over like shield batteries. The Queens don't get to join in on the actual fight for a while because they're slow, so they're just mostly transfusing, which is still good. But, you know, it's kind of transfusing Corruptors versus shield batteries on top of Void Rays. Then the Queens join in, and hopefully you've already picked off some units. Like, this army that Trap has might have had a chance, maybe. but not when it's army. Not when the natural is already destroyed, when he doesn't have +1, when he doesn't have shield batteries to fall back to. I mean, these hardly count. Things are already terrible anyways. It's a very bad finals. Traps, no good, very bad day. And that's the analysis. Overall, I do feel a bit better about my cast, but I still wish that I had the same confidence and ability to almost kind of foresee the future, not to give myself too much credit, as some of the other matchups. Maybe use this game. The evolution chamber block against adepts. Because I know Serral did it versus someone, and there weren't many ZVPs actually that Serral was in, so. I don't think this was it though. I think it was a game where Serral was in the bottom left. Oh yeah, this is the game that he overreacted to the pool first. Did Sound Resonating Glaives against Serral? Well, he literally just skips a Roachhorn, so it's definitely not this game, right? I really don't remember this series. This was... I know it ended with a base trade, but I don't remember why. I was literally casting this. I was like going to the VODs and like scrubbing through them, right? And I'd be like, I didn't cast this. Oh wait, yes I did. Oh yeah, that's how Queen walks, you're right. Yeah, no. So this isn't it either. What Protosses did Serral play in this season finals? I'm pretty sure it was on Blackburn. This game might have been Lake Glaives. Oh wait. Wait a minute. No, okay, I remember. Was this the one where it was like an adept all in? No, that was something else, wasn't it? It was Serral versus Trap version 1, which would again make the idea of Trap predicting the wall off defense even more viable, because he literally played against it. It's not even something that he heard Serral does. Okay, I remember now. So this is the one where the wall off actually stops his adept shades. But it's not, well, still doesn't really tell me what I wanted to know. Because this is a, an adept all in more than the 4-gate is, so Serral wouldn't have the same defense. We'll still watch it. So many casts, just a blur. Yeah. Yeah, I cast at least one of Serral's games. I'm actually not so interested in Serral's Asus Raw qualifiers because... And everyone's gonna point fingers, hypocrite. I think it's only worth noting if someone's playing off server at a different time when it doesn't happen frequently. Again, Trap does it all the fucking time. I don't really care for analyzing Serral's replays in Asus ROG because when he did play on Europe, he played about as well as we expect. I cast Serral over Showtime there. When he plays on Korea, he really never plays on Korea. And he has to play on Korea, not North America. He never does that, and he never plays at that time. So, I think a lot of it would just have to be me being like, yeah, I just think that he's playing poorly because he doesn't do this very often. Yeah, you know, in this game, this is interesting. So Trap starts off with the 4-gate, Oh, I thought this was the 8 gate. I guess I'm misremembering. Okay, so it is a 4-gated depth attack. Okay. So Serral, first of all, goes up to more drones. He doesn't go for the Roach Warren wall off because he doesn't get creep. So this is like the only reason why I think you wouldn't do it. You're talking to European qualifier? Oh, I cast him versus Showtime and it looked totally on point. But otherwise, I mean, I just... Thanks, Ancient One. So this time around, Trap... I mean, maybe Trap thought that this would be the same defense. So that makes a lot more sense. Alright, well, fuck. I totally forgot this game happened, if I'm being honest. So if Trap was recalling this defense... then maybe he was hoping that Serral wouldn't have roaches. Because Serral doesn't go to like a 330 roach more. Obviously, it's not actually the 4-gate resonant glaives that we would expect with like a robo. The robo's only just coming down, so it's not really the same build I was talking about. But if Trap did this and saw this defense and was like, what if that was a charge all in? Then I could really see that working, for sure. But this wasn't the defense I was talking about when it comes to Serral. So I don't think he actually did defend a typical 4-gated depth attack in this season finals.